Welcome to All About Coding Part 2. This is a two-part video series that will cover what we at CZU Finance know about Fiscal coding as of April 2019. This video has been updated from the previous version and might need to be updated again later if information changes. This is part 2 of the series and will look at coding, now called chart fields, at use in Fiscal, including how to split code. Part 1, a separate video, explained all the different codes. You should watch Part 1 and the Creating a Basic Purchase Order video first, so that this video about using the coding in Fiscal makes sense. Part 2, Chart Fields in Fiscal. Coding is not as easy as it once was, but it just takes a little patience and perseverance to learn how to do it in Fiscal. I'll be giving a few different examples of chart fields in Fiscal in this video, starting with very basic single lines of coding, and then split coding, wherein a purchase is charged to more than one part of the budget. There is a major change with coding in Fiscal, even ignoring all the changes in the codes themselves. In the past, we would make a purchase, and it didn't matter how many items there were. We made coding for the whole purchase at the bottom of the 65 or 93 based on the total dollar amount of the purchase. With Fiscal, the coding now is applied in a line-by-line manner. Each line item has its own coding. Managing this change is one of the major challenges of coding in Fiscal. Before I start, keep in mind that the term chart fields refers to the budget coding and is not the same thing as itemization, which is the data you enter for the item description, quantity, price, and the UNSPSC category codes. Your items and itemization lines can all be different, but the chart field's the same, as long as the account codes, formerly called object codes, and all the other budget codes are the same for all your items. For example, if you purchased a broom and some dish towels for your fire station, these would both be considered housekeeping items. In the past, they would both be given the object code 512. With Fiscal, that will be account code 5390550. If they are both being charged to the same budget, you wouldn't have to do any split coding. You would just use one line of coding per item. And both items would have the same coding, even though they would have different UNSPSC category codes. Category codes go in the itemization section, not the chart field section. On the other hand, if you bought a bunch of subsistence and a frying pan, those items would have different legacy object codes, 506 and 512, and now in Fiscal, different account codes too, so they can't have the same lines of coding, just as they couldn't when you used a standard 65. This purchase would require each item to have a different line of coding in the chart fields. Of course, they also have different UNSPSC category codes, but those codes go into the itemization and don't affect the chart fields. Another example of split coding in Fiscal would be buying something that is charged to multiple PCAs, whether it's one item, like fuel, with all its attendant taxes and fees, or a monthly utilities bill, a service getting charged partially to 02350 and partially to another PCA, or multiple items in one purchase getting split coded to different budgets. Recalling that each line item gets its own line or lines of coding, this last example can get complicated if the items have different account codes as well as different PCAs. If your coding is going to get complex, before you start your purchase order, it might help to sit down and work out your coding for each item in an Excel sheet, on scratch paper, or in whatever way works for you, to be sure all your amounts are adding up and to be comfortably prepared when entering the unfamiliar territory of Fiscal. A note about split coding subsistence. In my video about making a subsistence purchase order, I cover how to split code food in detail. This video may help too, but I recommend the subsistence video for a step-by-step guide on split coding food. On to the examples. Example 1. Straightforward chart fields where all the items in your purchase, no matter how many, are coded all to the same budget. This is analogous to when you'd make a Standard 65 or CAL FIRE 93 and have only one line of coding at the bottom. I'll review this quickly because I gave a very similar example in my Creating a Basic Purchase Order video. I'll be borrowing an example from someone's trip to Lowe's, as seen here on the Standard 65 they made. Mainly, I'm concerned with the green box, but note that even though the 4 items purchased, seen in the orange box, have different itemization and would have different category codes, they are all being charged to the same budget. They all have the same object code. I'll only use one line of chart fields coding for the whole purchase. Here we are in Fiscal. I've already entered most of this purchase order. I've entered my 4 lines of itemization, one line for each item, showing their description, quantity, amounts, and UNSPSC category codes for each of them, which are all different. The chart fields, however, are all the same. I'm charging the entire amount of this purchase to 02350 to my unit's budget. I'm not splitting it between the camp and the unit's main budget or between PCAs or anything like that. It's all going to the same place. As I showed in the Creating a Basic Purchase Order video, I use the PO Defaults link to set up the chart fields for all 4 lines of itemization. Each of those 4 line items will have its own associated line of coding, and to avoid entering the same coding 4 times, I enter it just once, here in the PO Default box, for all the lines. Be sure to click this Override button or this won't work. The PO Defaults box has a handy shortcut for coding called Speed Charts. Click this magnifying glass, and you can locate the PCA and fiscal year you want to charge to. You can do that by searching here under Speed Chart key. It begins with the PCA, a dash, and then the last 2 numbers of the fiscal year, in this case 18 for 2018. Click Look Up, and your result will appear. Using the speed charts will give you a lot of the codes you would otherwise have to look up manually. Click on it, and you'll see some codes have filled in here. What hasn't filled in is the account, alt account, or your reporting structure. You'll have to enter those yourself. I know mine for my unit 35401701 is the reporting structure for CZU. It's important that you put in the correct reporting structure for your unit, or camp, or forest. And here I enter the account code. Once you fill in the account code and then click in the alt account box, Fiscal will think and provide an alt account number for you. If you ever have to go back and change your account code, delete the account code, the alt account code first, and then click back in the account box like this. Fiscal will delete the account code for you, and then you can change it to the new code. If you just try to delete the account code first, you'll get an error. There is a crosswalk available for translating our old legacy object codes to our new account codes, and you can use that to figure out what your account code is for your particular purchase. I also leave this percent at 100 because the whole dollar amount of this purchase is going to this line of coding. When I click OK, this coding will be applied to all 4 of my items. And then all I have to do is go into the chart fields for them to double check that everything got applied correctly. It usually does. Once I'm done with that, I can save this purchase order and send it for approval. Producing a purchase order with just a single line of coding for all of the items is pretty easy. But let's go on to example 2, split coding by item. You might make a purchase of more than one item, where different items in the purchase are charged to different account codes because they're a different type of item, such as subsistence, which is legacy code 506, and a housekeeping item, which is legacy code 512. Those also have different account codes. Or perhaps different items in your purchase are being charged to different PCAs, or even to different reporting structures, perhaps to a different unit. Let's take an example I mentioned earlier. Let's say you went to Costco, and while you were there buying food, you realized that your fire station needs a new frying pan, so you bought a frying pan too. Of course, these different objects have different account codes. This example would also work for any other situation where you're coding items differently. Perhaps you went to Home Depot and bought some items that would have been object code 512, along with some that would have been 226. Or perhaps you bought several items, but you're charging one of them to a different PCA. Or you bought several items, but you're charging one of them to a different unit. For the food and frying pan example, which is what I'll go with for this explanation, in our old process with a standard 65, you'd code the frying pan to code 512 and the food to 506. The PCA would also be different because food always goes to 02090, and that hasn't changed. Your coding at that time in legacy format would have looked something like this. Different items get different coding. It's the same in Fiscal. You will code your line items differently. Your coding will look something like this. In my example, I won't have just one line item for subsistence because subsistence has to be split out by category, such as vegetables, fruits, meats, dairy, etc. So multiple lines in my purchase order will have this first line of coding attached to them with different dollar amounts. Then just the frying pan will have this second line for my made-up amount of $15.73. The tax will also get charged to 02350. Aha, and that brings up a problem. You say, you've seen purchases like this before, and you know that when different items go to different coding, you have to figure out how much tax goes with each item, and it is no fun. Well, in this case, I've got good news for you. Fiscal will calculate the tax split for you because each item has tax applied individually in Fiscal, and it goes along with the coding that is also applied to each item individually. If you're having the items shipped to different locations, you can even adjust the tax code for the different addresses per item. So you don't have to worry about doing some math to figure out the taxes in this case. You only have to adjust the coding, line by line, for each item. Let's see this in action. I've made a brand new purchase order with a couple of lines for some subsistence and a third line for the frying pan. As you've seen, the PO defaults box takes the coding you enter there and applies it to everything in your purchase. But in this example, my items have different coding. You have a couple choices. You can ignore the PO defaults box entirely and just enter your coding for each of your 3 lines individually. But if you have a lot of items, this could take some time. I think the least work is to enter the coding for the most items that go to the same budget that have the same coding into the PO defaults box, and then change the coding individually for the ones that are different, going by each line item using their schedule icon. I'll show you this process for my example. I have 2 lines with the same coding, so I'll enter it in the PO defaults box. I copied this purchase order, so there's some coding already here. It's already coded to my unit to 02090. The program appropriation reference and fund codes already came through. The correct account code for subsistence, for food, is already there. It's already on override. I'll send this food to headquarters of CZU, even though that's unlikely. So I click OK. And now that coding, yes, always just click select all and OK. So that coding is now applied to all 3 lines. That's great for lines 1 and 2. They are in fact food, they are subsistence. But line 3 is a frying pan. It's not food, it's not getting charged to that budget. I go to the schedule icon and I will change the coding for just this line. Then I go to the distributions chart fields icon. And you can see here that, yep, it's coded to 02090. It's got the wrong account code. I need to change this. Just like in the PO defaults box, you can go to the speed chart. Click on the magnifying glass if you like. I want this to go to 02350. To fiscal year 18, I can click look up and click on that, and it changes it. Now it says 02350. Unfortunately, it has gotten rid of my account code and my reporting structure, so I have to enter those in again. I may have to look up the account code to find the right number for a frying pan. It's 5390550. I type it in, click in the alt account field. Fiscal will fill it in for me. If I ever have to go back and change that, just as I mentioned before, delete the alt account first, then click in the account box. Fiscal will get rid of it, and you can put in your new code. Otherwise, it'll give you an error. Now I can click OK, and the frying pan is coded to 02350 to its correct account number, and the associated tax that comes with it will also be coded to 02350 to that account number, because frying pans are taxed. I will have to go in, since I copied this purchase order, and make sure tax isn't getting applied to the food. Depending on how many items you have going to different budgets, you might choose not to use the PO defaults box at all. You could just enter the coding for each item separately using this schedule icon and the speed charts within to make it a little bit easier. Or you could do as I did here, enter coding that is common to all your items and just fill in the ones that are different through the schedules icon. It's up to you. Just check the chart fields at the end to make sure that they're how you want them. Okay, enough of the easy stuff. Example 3, split coding by dollar amounts. How do you split a purchase when you're taking the whole dollar amount of the entire transaction and say charging off $100 of it to this PCA, $50 to another PCA? It's not being split by item, but by dollar amount. This process is a bit harder. If you're doing it with subsistence, go check out the Making a Subsistence Purchase Order video where I go through it step by step just for food. That's a little bit easier because there's no taxes involved. For this example, let's pretend I have this same purchase at Lowe's we looked at a few minutes ago, but now I'm charging it to 2 different budgets. Here's the coding as it would look in legacy format. For whatever reason, 02350 is only paying for $100 of it, and the camp is paying for the rest. This is just an example. It could be any 2 different lines of coding here. I'm going to split this purchase just like this. Here's the coding for this example and what it will look like in Fiscal. See, some codes are different, some are the same, just like in legacy coding. Fiscal will provide some of these codes for you through speed charts. You'll need to know your account codes, which you can find through the crosswalk from legacy object codes, and reporting structures. All right, so how do you do this? Well, split coding by amount is not as easy in Fiscal as it was in our legacy method, and there are different ways to do it, each with pluses and minuses. Although you can somewhat blend the techniques in various ways, I'll show you 2 different techniques, and allow your ingenuity and growing understanding of the system to take it from there. Additionally, so far there is a major problem with split coding by amounts that I have not been able to fix, especially when the purchase has tax. No matter which technique you use, it is difficult to get the amount split exactly to the penny. Your result will often leave your split inaccurate by a few cents, even a few dollars, and maybe more. If you have to split a purchase by amount, you just have to do the best you can. You can use the PO defaults box to split the whole transaction in one place. It sounds ideal, but there's a complication or two. Or you can split it line by line. That sounds like a lot of work if you have a lot of lines, but there are situations where it will be easier than the PO defaults box. But it has complications of its own. I'll go through both of these techniques. Technique 1, the PO defaults box. Sounds great, right? Split the purchase in one place and you're done. However, currently the PO defaults box does not have the option of multi-speed charts, which is a tool that fills in most of your coding for you even when you're doing multiple lines of coding. It's only available in the lines section. That means you'll have to type codes in by hand. I also can't seem to get the PO defaults box to allow me to separate coding by dollar amounts, only percentage of the total price, which means some math. And the percentages might not get you your exact dollar amounts. The benefit is that you do it once, and it's done for the whole purchase. Going ahead with this technique, get your percentages ready. If you don't know how to do that, you take the small number, such as the $100 that's going to 02350, divide it by the big number, the total purchase. You'll get this decimal number. Move the decimal spots 2 to the right to get 32.08 in this example. Do that for all of the dollar amounts that you're splitting out. Then you'll want to confirm that your percentages, however many you have, add up to 100. Fiscal appears to allow 4 decimal places, but here's where the funny business starts. In my experience entering percents in Fiscal, you can enter 4 decimal places, but after you click OK, Fiscal will round what you entered to 2 decimal places. I don't know why. That's just what I've seen happen. Because Fiscal rounds up to 2 decimal spots, you might not be able to get the amount to be exactly what you want to charge. It might be off by some cents or even dollars if you're working in the thousands of dollars, which is definitely not ideal. This is a difficulty inherent in the capabilities of the system. As for the coding, there will be difficulties entering that too when you work with the PO defaults box in this technique. Let me show you. Here we are in that Lowe's purchase order again with the 4 different line items in the PO defaults box. For my first line of coding, I can go to the speed charts. And pick 0235018. And Fiscal will fill in some coding for me. Thank you, Fiscal. To get a second line, you can come over here and click this plus button. In this example, I only need 1 additional line. Also, keep in mind that whatever line of coding is first here will determine where your purchase order goes for approval based on the reporting structure that you enter. Take note that if you have copied a previous purchase order and are trying to add lines of coding, this plus button might not be there. If that's the case, here's how to get it to show up. Up here, under Default Options, click it back to default. Then click it back to override. And that will make the plus button appear so you can add additional lines. So I'll add 1 more line. Fiscal thinks, adds it in. It's gone and duplicated the first line I put in, 02350. But now the challenge is getting the second line to show not 02350, but the other coding I want, the coding for the camp, 03050 with a different reporting structure. I can click on it to make it look like it's gray, like it's selected, but if I go to the speed charts and try to get 03050 fiscal year 18 for it, I click on it. Oh, it's taken away my second line, and it's changed the first line to be 03050. Well, how do you get two lines? You can get two lines, but you can't use speed charts to fill them both in. So you'll have to fill in one line completely by hand, which is certainly possible. Right now, while I've got these codes available, I can write them down so that I can enter them, in particular the appropriation reference, fund, and program codes for the second line when I'm ready to do it. So I've written down these codes, so I'll have them for the future. I add a second line. It thinks they're both 03050, but I'm going to try to put 02350 back in. Because I wrote down the codes for the second line. Now I will need to change the second line to have the correct codes for 03050 for the camp. So I've changed my second line to be for 03050, and I've put in the reporting structure for my camp. The program code is different. I've also put in the account codes, which are the same for both because all these objects have the same account code. They're just going to different PCAs. And now all I have to change here are the percentages. You'll see that there is no field here to enter dollar amounts. All you can enter are percents, the ones that I previously calculated to send the money off to the correct PCAs in the amount that I want. So I'll enter my percentages. These are they. For 02350, 32.08. For 03050, 67.92. Here you'll see it looks like you can enter 4 decimal places, but I've noticed that if I do, it just rounds it up to 2 decimal places anyway. And then I can click OK. It's going to ask me again if I want to change all of these things that I just changed. You can click Select All to get all the boxes checked, and then click OK. If you get a message like this that says it can't retrofit the percentages, that's because each of your line items only have one line of coding showing. There is a way to get that second line to show up. If you go into your line item, I think it will tell me this for every single line. Yes, it will. If you have a lot of lines, it could take a while to get through all those messages. Now if I go into the schedule icon and the chart fields distribution, it's only going to show one line, but if I click the plus, it should give me my second line. And there it is. Yep, it's going to the camp. It's got 03050, but it's still confused about the percentages, so I'll have to change them again here. So here I've entered the 2 percentages I just entered in the PO defaults box, and then I click OK. And you will have to do this possibly for every single line item of your purchase. Make sure the coding is correct. If it only shows one line, click the plus to get a second line, and then the correct second line of coding should appear, and change the percentages if you have to. You'll also want to, as usual, check your taxes just to make sure everything is applied correctly. These percentages you entered will also be splitting the tax by those percentages. But you won't be able to see that. It's hidden somewhere. When I'm happy with my purchase and all of my coding, I can click Save and send it for approval. You can see that this technique for split coding by amount using the PO defaults box is a little troublesome. Well, there is another way. Technique 2 is to code line by line. This sounds tedious, but it's not as bad as you might think because you can use speed charts. And some of your items can still be handled by the PO defaults box. And as you've seen, even using the PO defaults box, you may have to go in and finesse each line anyway. With this technique, you might also have to do some subtraction with your dollar amounts, especially if you're coding to more than 2 different lines of coding. Technique 2 works great for non-taxable purchases, but when there is tax, Fiscal splits the tax for you based on the dollar amount split you specify in the line coding for each item. I'll show you this later. It calculates the amounts you specify into percentages and then splits the tax by those percentages, and that changes the amounts you're trying to get from splitting the purchase. There's a formula to convert the amount you'll need to enter to the correct amount for Fiscal, so that Fiscal adds the right amount of tax to it to get close to your target amount. I'll show this to you shortly. On the plus side, however, if you have more than one line of coding, there's no need to worry about wondering what the other codes are because you can't use multi-speed charts in the PO defaults box. And you don't have to figure out the percentages of your dollar amounts. I'll show you the second method and you can decide which you like better. First, let's take care of the math and do a little planning. Here's my example purchase. 4 items. $100 I'm charging to 02350. The rest to the camp budget, just like the example I just did. Of course, your purchases will be different. You might be coding to more than 2 places. You'll have different amounts. You'll need to strategize how you're going to code off your amounts. I could code these $100 to the 4th item. And then the other $58 of that item, I could code to 03050. But I do have options. I could code this $100 to any of these other line items. But I think just doing it once on the 4th line will be easier. Let me show you how. So here I am, back in Fiscal, the same purchase at Lowe's, the same 4 items. There's my 4th line with that $158 I was just thinking about split coding. But most of my items, these other 3, will be coded to 03050. So I go to the PO defaults box and I put in just one line of coding, 100% to 03050 to the camp. That's easy. I can use my speed charts just as I've shown you. To get this line of coding, I just have to put in the account code and the reporting structure. And I leave it to 100% because I'm going to take care of that extra $100 that I want to code to 02350 in the line items itself. But this defaults everything to 03050, so I won't have to touch most of my lines. I click OK. It asks me this again. Click Select All, click OK. Again, it's going to give you messages like this. Don't worry about it, we'll deal with it. Click OK. All right. Now, everything right now is coded to 03050. I just need to charge $100 of it to 02350. And I'll do that at the line item level. I'll charge the $100 from line item 4 to 02350. I could also charge it to lines 1 and 3, but those are less than 100, so I'd have to take an additional amount out of a different line, and that's more complicated than I want to do. I'll just use line 4 and leave the rest coded to 03050, as I specified in the PO defaults box just a moment ago. So when you're getting ready to do this, you'll have to strategize the easiest way, the least amount of work, for you to get your coding done. I'll go into the coding for just line 4. Click the schedules icon, click the distribution icon. But before I start split coding this item, recall that this item is taxed. I could put 2 lines here and say that $100 will be coded to 02350, but there will be tax on that $100, and that tax will get coded to 02350 too. That will mean more than $100 is charged to 02350. I don't want that. I want exactly 100, or as close as Fiscal will let me get. So my $100 must include the tax within it. So into Fiscal, into the line item, I have to enter less than 100. But how much less? There's a formula for that. If you're going to use this technique number 2 for putting split coding in the line items for taxable items, you'll want to write this down. In my example, the amount I want to charge to 02350 is $100. That will be my variable S. If my tax rate is 8.5%, I put that in decimal form and add 1. Here's an example. It'll end up being 1.085. That is my variable T. I divide S by T and get E. E is the amount I'll enter in Fiscal. In my example, my S, the amount I want to split code, is $100. I divide it by the tax rate plus 1 in decimal form, 1.085, and I get this 92 point blah blah blah. That is the amount I will enter in Fiscal. And then when Fiscal taxes that, the tax on this $92.17 will add up to $100. And the correct amount, $100, will be charged to 02350. I'll show you where to enter this number. Here in the line section for my 4th line item, which is $158 without tax, the first thing you want to do is change this drop down that says distribute from quantity to amount. Fiscal thinks. You'll see now there's this field for merchandise amount which appeared. You can't get this in the PO defaults box. You have to work in percentages there. But here in the line items, you can get the option to enter an amount instead of a percent. Scroll all the way to the right and click the plus. I need 1 additional line. If you're split coding to more than 2, you can enter however many additional lines you need. I click OK. It gives me a second line, which is currently duplicating the first line. But I want the second line to be different. I want it coded to 02350. Go to the multi-speed charts link. This also is not available in the distribution, in the PO defaults box. This multi-speed charts link is only available in the line items section. Click it, you'll get this window. Click the plus again to add a second row. Here are your speed charts. I want my first one to be 03050, just as it already is. Second one, I'm coding to 02350. That'll be my $100. Except it's going to be less $100 because the amount here is going to get taxed, and that tax will be added to the 02350 charge. So if I go back here, I see that $92 and about 17 cents is what I will enter here in Fiscal, the amount to distribute. When I enter it and click into the other field, Fiscal will think and calculate here how much remains of that $158 that is for this particular item without tax to distribute. That's how much I enter here in the other field. Together, that equals 158. It's nice of Fiscal to make this calculation for me, but if you have more than 2 lines, if you're coding this off, split coding it 3 ways, 4 ways, 5 ways, you will have to do some math ahead of time to know how much money to distribute to each line. Fiscal only provides a running total. If I click again, it should tell me there's no remaining amount to distribute. Now I click OK. Fiscal will think. When it comes back here, you see the merchandise amount has adjusted to those dollar amounts you specified, and my second row is now 02350. You can see the program code has changed. Unfortunately, the reporting structure is gone again, and so is the account. You'll have to enter those back in. Once I've entered those codes, I'm ready to go. Fiscal will apply tax to this 6583, and that tax will be charged to 03050. It will also charge tax to that 9217 and charge it to 02350. Combined with the tax, this 9217 will equal $100, approximately. It might be a few cents off, but this is the best we can do. I click OK. And Fiscal thinks. I can return to my main purchase order. And I'm done. The other 3 lines I specified using the PO defaults box. And it's a good practice to go in and make sure that they are correct, just in case there's any funny business going on. Now, if I had a third PCA I wanted to charge some of this purchase to, I would need to do another calculation with that little formula that I showed you to find another value, and then go change the coding on one or more of my other items to include that amount. This is not a perfect system, but these are the best techniques I know of at the time of making this video to allow for split coding. Other videos cover the differences for eFund coding and subsistence.